Hi, ma'am.
Good evening.
So it's ready to go, ma'am?
Yes.
Cool. We'll just go ahead. Hi, good evening, one and all. Welcome to another interesting interviewing session of the show, The Interview, hosted by Lakshmi Rao and promoted by Fertile Prince Prasanna Kumar. Today we have a guest, a super personality, Anita Panda from Mumbai, who is a prolific writer and a poet. Here we do welcome you. Yeah.
Good evening and namaste, Mr. Lakshman Rao. It's my absolute pleasure and privilege and honor to be on this platform and to be interviewed by a man and a poet of your depth and profundity.
Cool, ma'am.
Thank
It's my honor as well. It's my honor as well.
you.
Greetings, ma'am. Cool. So on this note, I'll just read out your short bio, ma'am. And from there on, we'll get into the session. It is a short bio of Anita Panda. Anita Panda is a Mumbai-based bilingual author, blogger, former feature writer, a teacher, nature lover, and an aspiring TEDx speaker. She is a poet at heart, a published author of Genesis in 2021, dedicated to her valiant late brother, and her own debut book, Songs of My Soul, in 2023, a collection of 47 poignant poems. Anita's works has been published in various anthologies: Indian Poets United, We the World Poets, Living On, Amity Peace Poems, Unkai, Buffering Beyond the Barrel, The Mountain Was Ours, Poems of Himalaya, Setu Matwala, Bilingual, Toy Mumbai Mirror, DNA, New Human, and digital magazines else. She is also an active participant on several national and global literary forums. So here we do welcome Anita Panda onto our show, The Interviewer. Yes, ma'am, the show is yours.
Thank you.
Well done, ma'am. So how is your literary journey happening, going on?
Sorry, I couldn't get that.
How is your literary journey happening?
I'm losing your voice, Mr. Rao. The questions are not it's not coming clearly to me. Could you repeat?
So how is your literary journey happening, ma'am?
Well, it's going great guns, and I'm very, very happy to be on to be writing prolifically, to be on so many national and global platforms, showcasing my work.
Okay.
So it's a very, very exciting and thrilling and journey of learning and evolution. I learn every time I learn from others. Thank you.
That's a great way of saying things, ma'am. Like, ma'am, at the outset, like you have said, you used to become a globally renowned author or poet one day. So, are you obsessed with the fame, or are you ambitious to be known as a famous poet?
That's a very good question. Well, aspiring for fame and recognition, Mr. Rao, is a very natural human desire, I think. And
Okay.
I'm human enough to have that desire. So, of course, I would be dishonest if I say I don't aspire to. But I would say it's both. Aspiring to pursue my literary passion is, of course, it has always been with me. And it's a genetic inheritance, as I mentioned to you, but also to leave behind my own humble legacy through my work, through my poetry, to strive to create a deep emotional connection with a larger fellowship, with a wider audience, and leave behind a more humane, a kinder and compassionate world through the power of poetry. To quote Salman Rushdie, to sing the truth and name the liars.
Oh, that's nice. That's fabulous. Okay.
Thank you.
Ma'am, like going ahead, say something about your book, The Songs of Your Soil, in your own words and verses. How different is your poetry with that of other poets and other poet works?
Well, Mr. Rao, Songs of My Soul was published in 2023, and it's an anthology, a collection of my 47 poignant poems, sensitively crafted poems, a very honest expression, powerful expression of my joys and my sorrows, love, loss, betrayal, and the power to be resurrected again. It's an intense, soul stirring journey through my musings and intense reflections on life. These are poems of learning, unlearning, and relearning. And each of my poems is inked in and throbbing with that raw human emotion, passion, courage, and resilience of the human spirit. It's also a bold assertion of who I am in a still deeply patriarchal India, in a judgmental world, and my, uh, my sense of being a feisty crusader and warrior, fighting for, crusading for women's rights, determined to break through the social stigmas that still slot, shame, and judge a woman in a still patriarchal India. It is also a tale of my travels to exotic lands, from the Nile to the Persian Gulf, from Boca to Salzburg, from Konark to lockdown epiphanies, traversing continents and cultures, straddling landscapes both internal and external. And it's also a journey of my spiritual awakening and my tryst with Nichiren Buddhism. It is, to quote Dag Hammarskjöld, my book is, or rather essays, the quote by Dag Hammarskjöld, the longest journey is the journey inwards.
Yeah, true.
A deep dive into my soul and a bold and candid expression of my heart and soul that connects with a wider audience and the world.
That's very well said.
Thank you.
I believe like you have given the entire you have encompassed the entire wholeness of your book in your words. That's fine way of saying it.
Thank you.
As you say, like just going ahead, as you say, when you say that writing comes naturally,
Yeah.
and the harder part is like the editing part. Okay, like when we write and we try to edit and re-edit, and that's a huge Herculean task sort of thing. So why don't the writers and the authors they edit then and there itself so as to give a different feel altogether?
Well, I can't say about other writers, but
Others,
I only speak with authority for myself, Mr. Rao.
yeah, yeah.
I feel, I'm a perfectionist, and I don't like to do or edit poems or do it in a hurry or in haste. I like to deeply reflect. I'm a sensitive poet, so I like to go through several editings and take my own time being a perfectionist. So I don't correct it there and then. In that way, I'm different from the other poets.
So you give some time so that you can saturate your themes,
Yes.
subjects. So
Yes.
later on you just modify it or to enhance it or to do a betterment.
Yeah, absolutely.
To a better version of it. Let's say.
Absolutely.
That's nice. Now, what I read from your forwards and acknowledgements, that do we need constant encouragement and inspiration from others to keep up their poetic spirit alive, to drive us, to inspire us? Do we need that?
I won't say we need it as a validation, but in my forwards and acknowledgements, if you have read them, Mr. Rao, it's a way of paying my tribute. It's a way of expressing my gratitude and thanks to all those who have helped me in this creative journey, right from my two greatest mentors, my illustrious father, Dr. Abnesh Panda, my valiant late brother, Colonel Surikant Panda, and all those who have contributed in some way or the other in shaping my prolific creative and poetic journey.
Cool. Nice. Ma'am, as you said again, well then, going ahead, you say that grief is dominant in my poems, but also a life lesson to master wisdom through pain. And I could read through the poems, but why is that you are so succumbed to that sorrow, grief, and pain? Why can't you move ahead? And why is that like you can't be the bold and beautiful you are?
I will disagree with you here, Mr. Rao. If you have gone through my my warrior poems, I rise, the phoenix, I shall rise, single woman, you will realize that I'm a feisty crusader. I'm a warrior. I not just crusade for women's rights as a feminist at heart. I'm also someone who uses who is like the phoenix, the legendary phoenix bird, in ancient cultures. I rise through my ashes like the phoenix, if you have read my poems. So it is far from what you're saying. My poems, as much as they are a naked and raw, candid, honest bearing of my heart and soul of the grief. Yes, grief is dominant in my poems, but my poems are also an expression through the metaphor of the phoenix of the resilient human spirit, the courage and resilience of the human spirit. So, like the phoenix, I rise through my ashes and I fight on. I'm a warrior. So I don't agree with that. I disagree.
Ma'am,
Very politely.
besides taking on those painful poems and other stuff, and you have been very much spiritually inclined, very well interconnected as well. In the poem Aham Brahmasmi, you say that into that aloneness I connect with the universe and become bliss. So such a beautiful line because it connects the spirit and the spirituality. It's very much, very well interconnected. I like the progression of that poem. So what's your personal touch on that specific poem?
I don't know when, I don't recollect when I penned this poem, but as you said, I'm a very deeply spiritual person. Even before I before I embraced and encountered the life empowering philosophy of Nichiren Buddhism. So there's a deep, a spiritual element which underlines all of my poetry, if you've seen it. And, I'm a person who deeply reflects, very sensitive. My poems come from a very deeply sensitive and authentic space, not just grief and pain, but I dwell and I reflect on, all the human mortality and the various phases of the human cycle and human life: birth, youth, aging, illness, suffering, pain. So I'm like an itinerant traveler on a cosmic journey. So because I
Cool.
profoundly dwell on these aspects, I feel so connected with the universe that I become the universe. I am Aham Brahmasmi.
Yeah, ma'am, on this note, I can say that like if it starts with pain and it ends with spirituality, your philosophy stays in between. So here I have quote for you. Pain is the pivotal form of philosophy. Pain is the pivotal form of philosophy as spirituality comes in vogue from there on. From pain, it starts with philosophy and spirituality starts from there on. Do you accept this?
Sorry, once again, if you could come again.
Okay. Well then. Pain is the pivotal form of philosophy. Pain is the pivotal form of philosophy as spirituality comes in vogue from there on.
I don't know if I quite get your question, but if
Cool
you're
then,
thinking about
let's move on. Let's go going forward. Like even in the Moha and Maya of your poems, that reflects on the same theme. On the same theme in the sense like your philosophy of pain and agony and on mysticism, you have written it well. I really love the rhythmic approach towards each and every poem, which is the most essential element of poetry. So, what do you want to say about other technical devices of poetry?
Well, I'm basically and fundamentally a free verse poet. I don't
Yeah,
necessarily adopt the rhyme scheme, but you see a rhythm and a flow in my poetry,
yeah,
and I'm greatly fascinated by the metaphor of the phoenix, which
yeah.
defines the essence, the soul, and the heart of my poetry. My poetry breathes fire and passion. It's also about joys and sorrows, and my poems come from a very, very sensitive space, where I feel my emotions and also those of others. It comes from the depths of my soul, mastering wisdom through pain. And my poetry is, among the technical devices which you asked, I think I have a fascination for similes and metaphors, and sometimes occasionally rhymes, but not a die-hard follower of the rhyme scheme. It's mostly the free flowing organic poetry which comes from my heart.
Yes, ma'am. That's nice to know, ma'am.
Thank you.
And going ahead, ma'am, like going ahead, like I have this thing to ask you, like one sec. Ma'am, well, with the advent of this AI, how do you foresee the future of poetry?
Well, AI is here to stay, I believe, for some years, many more years. So while you cannot do away with the danger or the benefits of I would say, poetry can never be displaced or replaced by AI. At least I can speak for myself, as you say, in an AI-driven world, in a mechanical AI-driven world, um, authentic poets like you and me who write from the heart and soul, For them, AI does not pose a danger. And also, for authentic poets like us, who have grown up writing poetry at a young age, like I did. I don't know about you, but I began penning poetry at the age of 11. So for me, poetry is very, very organic and something, a genetic inheritance. Also, I write poetry. My poems are all about heart and soul. I value human emotions, and I write poetry to leave behind a more humane and compassionate world. Also, AI is not so much of a threat to authentic poets because their work has been well documented and witnessed by others. So I don't think AI or the advent of AI poses a danger to authentic poets like me or you. Hello, Mr. Rao.
Well, ma'am, there was a disturbance. I believe like there was a slang here. So is it audible, ma'am?
Yes, it is. So did you miss my answer?
Yes, ma'am. I totally missed it.
Oh my God. So let me repeat it. Am I audible now?
Yeah. Yeah, it's audible.
So as I said, AI is a great tool, but it also has its imminent dangers. But while AI is here to stay, Mr. Rao, I feel authentic poets like you and me, who write from the heart and soul, and for poets like us, I've had this conversation with some erudite, learned poets and literary mentors of mine who believe that AI can never displace organic and authentic poets. Also, for authentic poets, their work has been documented and witnessed by others. And
Others.
for a poet like me, I've been writing since age 11. I have graduated and post-graduated in English literature from prestigious
That's great. That's great.
where we have had to understand every intricacy of language, the hyphen, right? No, the grammatical, the
Errors.
intricacies like the comma, the dash, the hyphen. And also, if you notice, there are some writers, the so-called AI writers, who don't write with heart. Their poetry lacks the heart and soul of
So,
authentic writers, and they don't use the grammatical, they're not conversant with the grammatical intricacies. They
true.
misuse them,
True.
or maybe you'll find the AI writer, you spelling honor or color the American English way and
Yeah,
not the
that comes in.
traditional way
Agree.
we've been taught, in schools and
Yeah, true.
in universities.
Yeah.
Also, if you have contributed your poems to anthologies, they always ask and state very clearly, no AI generated content. So that's a
Got
way to keep check
Yeah.
on those, misusing or using
Yeah.
AI for their poetry. I can only speak with authority about my own poems, that I'm a
Yeah.
very deep,
That's
sensitive, and very authentic poet. And I write poetry from my heart and soul. For me, it's a catharsis and emotional release. And I'm very particular about using language perfectly, being a perfectionist, the right use of grammar and punctuation. So I don't think AI can displace authentic poets like me or you.
Yeah. It's not only you and me, ma'am. The point is like the human mind can't be taken over by the AI
Absolutely.
when it comes to creativity.
Absolutely.
So there are some elementary school poets, I can call that way, like who wants to try their hand through AI, and they just try to bring in some prose kind of poetry. So that's their take. So we are helpless in that on that. So going ahead, like I love this poem. I loved especially this and the rose
Sorry,
from
please,
the
I couldn't
poem
get.
and the rose, the
And the,
rose.
yes, let me just get
Okay.
the poem. And the,
So
yeah.
okay, here you say like solitary tubes or clusters these she blooms, bewitching poets, painters, and philosophers alike. And even after she builds, she nestles quietly between the leaves of books, a miracle of nature to cherish. So give an insight of your own interpretation of this poem, because I
Well,
really
when
loved those lines.
yes. So, I don't know when I penned this poem exactly, but when I wrote this poem, probably subconsciously, Mr. Rao, I was influenced by the famous opening lines of John Keats' poem. You must have heard of it. Thing of beauty is a joy forever. Its loveliness increases. So probably that was in my subconscious when I penned the poem and the rose. And so you will find that, you know, the beauty of a flower like the rose is not just, it does not end after its demise. So like I've mentioned, when it is alive and it is blooming, it is fragrant, radiant, and ravishing. And, you know, it's in a riot of colors. But even after it is no more, and even after it becomes dried petals, it still finds a place. Like poems find, or great work finds find their place in history. So the beautiful rose finds its way even after it wilts and droops and dies in the pages of books, you know. And I myself, I habitually keep roses and flowers in between the pages of my book. So this probably explains, you know.
Most of the girls or the women folk, they do this. So as to fragmentate that book, or so as to get that essence of that rose, I believe so. Like yes. I've seen that. I've seen. So I really thoroughly enjoyed your poetry, ma'am. Every glimpse of your words made me awestruck. I really loved. I read most of your content. So yeah, going ahead. It's with God's own canvas, unfolding with master strokes. No painter, no poet can ever capture.
Which poem is this? I'll just get to the page.
Like you and I just wrote, like from which this thing I got it.
Let me just get to the page. I know. I think you. Which is this poem? Color Me. Is it Color Me?
I'll just get it for you.
Okay. I think it's Color Me. I think I can make probably. You're speaking for line. You're quoting lines from my poem Color Me.
And Ode to the Atlantic Moon.
Okay, let me get to that then. An Ode to the Atlantic.
No poet, painter, nor philosopher.
No, that is not from the Ode to Atlantic.
Yeah, that's it.
No, I'm unable to place, you know, which poem exactly you're speaking of. It's not Color Me.
It's God's own canvas, unfolding with master strokes. No painter, no poet can ever capture.
Okay, I'll try to answer because I'm not getting the poem here in my book, but I'll try to answer your question.
Yes, ma'am. Well then, like, what do you want to say about it, ma'am? Like, just because you brought in painter, poet, and the philosophy. Okay, so what is the amalgamation between all these three elements or people? A painter, poet, and the philosopher.
The poet, the philosopher, and a painter with words. And I would say the same for a painter. You know, so I don't think there is any differentiation between the three because they are using creativity as a powerful medium of expression, you know, to express their art, whether it's through poetry or a painting or through philosophy. So I think all are intertwined, you know.
Yeah, true. So it's all like their creative sensibilities that comes to the fore.
Absolutely.
A painter does, even if it's an abstract painting, he brings out his insight. But even if it's an abstract poem, a poet brings out his own sensibilities onto the fore. So it's
there before. Yeah. Whether it is the canvas of the nature or the canvas of the palette on which the painter put. You know, it is an amalgamation of all three, I think.
All three. Yeah. Of all. Cool. So that is what I just wanted to ask, and I really feel like I got a beautiful answer from
you. I'm glad you did.
Yeah. Ma'am, going ahead, like, I loved your lovable lines from this poem, Beati Memory, which in Latin,
one of my earliest poems.
Memories. Yes. So please recite any of your stanza that you like from your own voice that connects your conscience and conscientiousness.
Sure. Thank you so much. I love that poem too. One of my earliest written poems when I was still graduating at Xavier's, Kolkata. Okay. So this is a love poem, and derived from the Latin. I was very fascinated with this expression "Beate Memoriae." So I found out from the dictionary that it means blessed memories, and you know, I wanted to. It's a very sentimental love poem. So the I don't know if I can answer your question perfectly, but based on your question, I would say I would like to quote these lines in the second last paragraph of Bete Memoriae, which resonate with your question and probably answer it if that satisfies you.
No, there's nothing to satisfy. Like it's your personal point of view, your perception. So that I need to acknowledge and accept it. As simple as that.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Rao. So I'm quoting the lines from the second last paragraph of this poem. Remember, my beloved, there on that magnificent, pristine marble statue, now yellowed with decay and neglect, where the busy little spider still weaves away furiously, meticulously weaving a diaphanous web of her foolish, lazy, rosy dreams and her callow, juvenile, salad days, now erstwhile.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Because I can sense your voice, pitch of your voice in terms of your verses as well. See, unlike all the readers, I am I can say like only a poet can understand the other poet in the sense like you can really understand the pitch of the voice of a writer of the
Absolutely.
poet, isn't it? So that way, like I could decipher your voice of presentation in your poetry. That has very much very well said. In fact, so
Thank you.
cool, man. So going ahead, like who is your favorite poet, man, of all times? If this is the case.
I am a bilingual writer poet, Mr. Rao. So I write with equal felicity in English and Hindi. But
Okay.
we are talking about English poetry and literature. So as a student of literature who was graduated and post-graduated in English, I would say, the poets I grew up studying as part of my literary curriculum, especially the English lake poets Wordsworth, William Wordsworth, Shelley, Keats, Coleridge, Robert Browning, T.S. Eliot, they've all profoundly impacted the style and the soul of my poetry. And I love lines from Khalil Gibran, like all of us, most of us do, and from Rumi. In fact, the lines in my debut book, if you have gone through the manuscript, it says, "I'm not this hair, I'm not this skin, I'm the soul that lies within." The quote by lines by Rumi. So uh, these are the timeless poets, who resonate, or rather, my poetry, my voice, my manner of expressing poetry is influenced and impacted deeply by their kind of timeless poetry, which is relevant across all ages. Also, my late brother, who was very close to me, late Colonel Surikant Ponda, though he fought cancer as bravely as he fought for India on its borders, I'm so proud to say he was not just a Fauji and a valiant soldier of India, he was also a wonderful, fine poet. And I'm also influenced by his kind of poetry. Um, if you don't mind, can I quote a few lines? I know it's not
Sure, man. Sure.
poetry, but just to explain to you how profoundly I'm impacted by his poetry. Is it okay if I recite a few lines?
Yeah, true, man. Go ahead.
Yeah, just give me a second, please.
Sure.
So, my late brother Surya's poem, an ode to the. By the way, my first book technically is my brother's
Genesis.
book. If you can see Genesis by late Surikant Ponda, he unfortunately died. So he always had this wish to have his poetry published, but never got the time because of his myriad postings. So I paid my tribute, and my first book technically is Genesis, a collection of late Surya's poems dedicated to him as a sister's tribute to him. And my
Cool.
own is Songs of My Soul, which you very well know, which we are discussing.
Awesome
So
poster.
I'd like to read out these profound lines from late Surya's poems, which have profoundly influenced my style of poetry. So his lines are, and his title is, the title of the poem is Ode to the Ganges, written by late Surya. This is the kind of poetry which really touches my soul and influences and impacts my poetry. As I caressed thy grave and maternal face, history reflected on thee. I listened to thy heartbeats, a song of saintly sorrow, and truth reverberated from thee. Promise me then, O Ganges, when the funeral pyre is alight, and the flames leap high, smear my ashes on thy brow, and take them to the vast sea. So, becoming clouds, I return again and again to thee. It's a profoundly personal and very, very moving poem, which brings tears to my eyes, because I remember this was like a trailer, before his death, a trailer of his kind of creativity and fine poetry. So Surya's poetry has also influenced my style
Your
profoundly.
style. Yeah. So you took up where he has left now? Do you believe like you took up poetry from where he has left the legacy?
From the, sorry?
The legacy, where Surya had left it. So
Yes.
you mean to say like you picked up from there?
No, I've always been writing poetry. In fact, I and my brother, late brother, we always competed with each other. And I would attribute it to my father. He sowed the seeds of writing early within me, at least.
Okay.
And within my brother too. And also, as I mentioned, I think we are blessed to have Ma Saraswati's grace upon us. It's a genetic inheritance from my scholar grandfather. And my father had a personal, home library. So he would often coax me to read Kamala Das's poems or various authors. And I think I also attribute not the style of my poetry, but shaping my attitude towards writing and poetry by my father. He played a profound role, though he's not a poet and writer, a legend in his field, but not a poet and writer. But he sowed those seeds early within me. So
that's a great quality. It's a great quality of great people to sow the seeds in the children, to cultivate them, to cooperate with them, to enhance the creative sensibilities in them. That's a great sign from great people, ma'am.
Yes.
Ma'am, going back to the previous question, like who is a favorite author? You had certain lines about Maya Angelou as well. Yes, he had certain sayings. So you like you arise like a phoenix. So say something about Maya Angelou and some about that, those lines.
I haven't read much of her poetry, but I don't remember the lines really. But the lines from The Phenomenal Woman, the curve of my hips. I don't recall the exact lines, but the curve of my hips, and that's a very powerful poem which has shaped my kind, and it's my kind of poetry, because it's about a vociferous cry of a woman, of a feminist. The cry against gender bias and the manner in which a woman is abused, whether in India, in America, or worldwide. So I don't remember the exact lines, but her lines from The Phenomenal Woman, that's a very phenomenal poem of hers.
Very well.
Affected me greatly.
It's a world acclaimed poem. So do you find the similarities between Maya Angelou and Kamala Das?
I have read Kamala Das long back as a teenager. So I think you cannot compare the two. You cannot compare. And I vaguely remember Kamala Das's poetry is more of the erotic kind of love poetry, whereas Maya Angelou's is more feminist, the kind of poetry I write, I resonate with Maya Angelou's poetry. So the two are very different and in a league, in a class apart.
Their own league, yeah.
So the two cannot be compared really, but both are very, very fine and phenomenal poets.
They're very much unique in their own way.
Yes.
As you are unique in your own way, I can say
But
this.
But since you're asking me, Mr. Rao, may I quote a few lines from a few poets who have impacted my style of poetry?
Sure, ma'am. Sure, go ahead.
So one is, these are the lines, T.S. Eliot's The Wasteland, lines from The Burial of the Dead, a very powerful poem, if you've read it. The aftermath of the First World War and the devastation and disintegration of society it talks of. And the lines are so powerful, this is the kind of poetry which impacts and which has shaped my expression of poetry. April is the cruelest month, breeding lilacs out of the dead land, mixing memory and desire, stirring dull roots with spring rain. And then there is because nature is my muse, and I'm basically a nature poet, fundamentally a nature poet. Nature inspires a lot of my poetry. So growing up, and reading the poetry of William Wordsworth, the lines from the poem "The Daffodils" they deeply touch my heart. That is the kind of poetry, nature poetry, I too write. I wandered lonely as a cloud that floats on high over vales and hills, when all at once I saw a crowd, a host of golden daffodils fluttering and dancing in the breeze. Also, lines by Robert Frost. This is also the kind of poetry which has shaped my style of writing. And I often quote his line, the iconic lines, "The woods are lovely, dark, and deep. I have promises to keep and miles to go before." And of course, lines from, how can I forget? I have to quote, I just have to quote the lines from Shelley's Ozymandias, which explores the themes of mortality and the fleeting nature of power, the destructive impact of time, Ozymandias. So that is very, very close to my heart. I had and the lost lines.
Cool, ma'am. Ma'am, if I have to ask you, like,
Yeah.
what would be your iconic lines? What would be your iconic lines from your own content? So, what would be your lines?
That is a very, very difficult question, asking me, because it will take me some time to decide which are the iconic lines.
So, any lines that you remember or recollect?
There are so many of the poems you have yourself gone through, Mr. Rao. But if I have to, I can't say, each of my poem is a masterpiece that I've tried to create in my own way. So I can't say these are the only iconic lines and this is the only poem which is one of my, which expresses the iconic lines. But if I have to quote the so-called your definition of iconic lines, then I'll quote a few. One is from the lines from Aham Brahmasmi. And this is very close to my heart because this is the kind of philosopher I am, the philosopher poet. Beyond love, loss, pettiness, greed, and the drama of this human life, past the entanglement of relationships that enslave me, I soar like the eagle now into the vast zenith, swirling and dancing in the whirlpools of infinity and stardust, merging into one with the supreme, Aham Brahmasmi.
Oh, that's awesome, ma'am. Ma'am, coming to the back end.
If I have to quote a few lines, not iconic, I don't know if I can call them iconic, but that describes me as a nature poet driven, inspired by the lake poets Wordsworth and Shelley I just mentioned. Color me in all your glorious shades, salmon pink, flaming gold, brilliant crimson, tangerine, lilac and slate gray, cerulean, purple and twilight blue. Color me in all your magnificence, where the heavens, earth, and sea merge into the vast cosmic whole. Color me in all your stunning beauty, like a painter's palette, splashed with vibrant hues, so I can merge gracefully into every atom of the universe, blending into the cosmos for unity, for eternity.
Oh, awesome, awesome. Color me into the canvas of poetry.
Absolutely.
That was wonderful, ma'am. Wonderful to know you as a person and as a poet, ma'am. So on this note, like we would like to know your insights about the program, the interview.
About this program?
Yeah.
Well, this is my first time on this show, and honestly, very candidly, I must say, I was scared to be interviewed by you because you're a man and a poet of such depth and profundity. And I've watched other interviews, which you have conducted so profoundly. So I was very, very anxious as to what I should, how I should prepare to answer your questions, because very, very deep, profound, insightful questions, and that just reflects the depth of your poetry and your personality. So it's an absolute honor and pleasure to be interviewed by a poet and man of your profundity, and an absolute delight to be on this show.
Same here. Same here. Thanks a lot, ma'am. Thanks for coming on to my show. And it was a great honor and privilege to have you on our show as well, the interview. Thanks a lot once again. Signing off.
I'd like to conclude by saying by expressing why I write poetry, though you've not asked that question, but can I?
Sure, ma'am.
Concluding note.
Yeah.
So you had asked, with the advent of AI, what is the danger how do you differentiate between the AI and authentic poets, and what is the danger it poses, and how do we detect AI written poetry. Now, see, it's also not just an answer to the question, but why I write poetry is because it is a very fearless, bold, and candid expression of my heart and soul. I write from the heart and soul. And poetry for me is not just cathartic, it is an emotional release. And it is for me a very personal endeavor, as also an act of my social activism and the feminist in me, standing up, crusading for the rights of the abused, crusading for the rights of women, or standing up for the abused um, women, or standing up for gender bias, standing up for the less privileged, the less fortunate. Also, in an AI-driven, deeply regressive world torn by war and violence, I write poetry because I wish to create a powerful bridge connecting um, minds which think alike, whether poets or thinkers or artists, breaking across the barriers of geography, religion, race, caste, political divides. I write poetry because it is not just a powerful creative mode of expression for me, but to value human emotions and to leave behind a more compassionate, a kinder, and a sensitive world, a more humane world, and to leave behind my own humble legacy for my son, my progeny, for my extended family, uh, and for the world. So when I'm no more, I hope one day people will read my kind of poetry too. Inspired, I can only hope. Poetry is also, I also write poetry because I embrace my authenticity. I own my voice and I speak my truth. It is also a journey through my grief, resilience, and resurrection. Rising like a phoenix through my ashes, which brings depth and adds to my profundity to my poetry, and also creates very deep healing spaces for those who have gone through this pain. And I would also mention my spiritual tryst with Buddhism here. Buddhism, I embraced this life altering, very profound philosophy of Buddhism when I was going through some of the worst personal challenges in my life and my brother's battle with cancer. That is how I embraced and encountered this spiritual practice. So, this practice has completely shifted my perspective. It has made me a wiser, stronger and a very compassionate person. It has given courage to my pen to write fearlessly. It has led to my spiritual awakening, and brought about a profound shift in my insight, in the way I look at life.
Your voice is very much imprisoned in your verses. Like that's very much clear over there. You are very much clear and candid in the way of your expression. I could find it out. Like you are awesome and an authentic poet. All that I can say.
Is the hugest compliment from you, Mr. Rao.
No, man, that's a genuine feeling what I got through your book. It was
Also,
nice knowing you, ma'am, as a poet.
I would like to quote the American Iranian poet Marjan Kamali, that it is through poetry or through writing or through any powerful creative medium of expression, whether through poetry or story, both the reading and writing of it, that so many of us find solace, refuge, hope, and understanding. So,
Yes,
and
ma'am.
the world needs, it's my very, very strong view. You may not agree with me, Mr. Rao, but just as the world needs an army of military soldiers to fight the war, to stem the violence, I think
So we need
we
poets as
need an army of courageous poets and thinkers and writers who can not just connect and build bridges with poets and thinkers alike across the world. We also need an army of poets who can speak up, speak the truth, and and own their truth, and speak out their voice unabashedly and courageously and fearlessly. We need an army of too. And I'm so privileged and so proud that I am a poet. I fight and I wield power through the pen, just as the soldier fights through the sword. Also, I'm a sword of Nichiren Buddhism.
When it comes to the iconic lines, as we were discussing, like these are the not only the iconic lines in the sense like the lines which have impact on our art and mind. See, like I have several quotes with me of my own. I have one such quote which has been lingering in my mind every time. When I do speak of poetry and poetics, the poet in me speaks while it's not me. When I do speak of poetry and poetics, the poet in me speaks while it's not me. That's my quote.
Wow. Very deep.
Well, ma'am. So that's how we are different as people and different as poets. And let's conclude this on that note. Like we'll have another session, hopefully, with another book, The Genesis.
I would
And
love.
we'll talk later. Sure, ma'am. So signing off from the interview session. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Prasannaji.
Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Lakshman Rao, for this very, very engaging, stimulating, invigorating intellectual discussion on the power of poetry and my kind, my style of poetry. I'm so privileged and proud and honored to be sharing.
Same here. Same here.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for saying. Thanks.